11 finals is winding down and the opportunity to earn that coveted invite is shrinking. The second to last regional was this weekend in Atlanta, featuring the top quarterbacks in the Southeast region. I am certain you have heard of a lot of these guys. So here to talk more about it is the other half of the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast. We had to do it anytime we got Andrew Ivins on the show. We got to bring his buddy Cooper Petagna here. Coop, you were in Atlanta for the Elite 11 Regional this weekend. You saw some big-time prospects, guys like Air Noland, Jadyn Davis, Aaron Philo. So let's start with Air. I mean, he landed the lone finals invite after it was all said and done. So must have looked pretty good. How did he look this weekend?
It was just about what we're used to seeing with Air Noland. I think the command of the position, I mean, this is a guy who's gotten better and better every single year as a 3-year starter at Langston Hughes in Georgia, and a guy that completed 74% of his passes. The reason I give you that type of context, it seems like the more pressure on Air Noland, the better that he performs. And he did that this week. We're going to talk about the guy that he competed against. That was Jadyn Davis. So obviously, you think about the game, right, the future of the game between Michigan and Ohio State, Jadyn Davis being the quarterback commit for the Michigan Wolverines. Those guys traded reps back and forth throughout the evening on Saturday. But Air Noland, just the consistency, the poise with how he plays. I talk about timing, anticipation, accuracy all the time. This is a guy, he's not going to wow you physically with the arm strength, but his ability at the first and second level as a passer to be on time and on target, that's really kind of where he separates himself from the field. And it was a long, hot day in Atlanta. And listen, as the day kind of wore on, he got better and better. And to me, that's kind of where he separated himself from the rest of the pack.
Coop, you mentioned that rivalry that's brewing. I love how you labeled this and came up with it. Just right now we have Jadyn Davis as a 5-star. Air Noland, he's in the 50s of our rankings. It seems like you don't think the gap is that big.
No, not at all. Not in my opinion. And I think if there was anything you saw this weekend is that gap is shrinking, and potentially I would tell you that I'd probably prefer Air Noland at this point. I know that's probably going to stir the pot a little bit, but I think Air Noland's got a little bit more athletic upside at the position. You talk about the frame. He's hovering around 6'3", Jadyn Davis around 6'1.5", and Jadyn Davis had a really good performance himself. I just think in terms of the upside at the position, Air Noland, the credibility of what he has at Langston Hughes. He's played against elite competition. You love him between the ears, but that shouldn't take away anything from Jadyn Davis and the fit in Ann Arbor under Jim Harbaugh, offensive coordinator Sherrone Moore. I mean, both these guys are actually pretty similar the way they play the game, and a lot of it comes down to instincts, intuition. I think both of these guys are going to be ready to play a lot earlier on Saturdays than people think.
I love the self-awareness, Coop. You know, our social team is just drooling right now after hearing you say that, but I love it. I love the analysis and the truth there. Let's go behind the future Big Ten quarterbacks. You got Georgia Tech commit Aaron Philo. You mentioned in your article that he won the accuracy portion of the event, so what stood out about his skill set?
Well, this is a guy that was uber productive. I mean, he was 14-0 last season, brought his team to a state title there in Georgia, playing Class A Division I Offensive Player of the Year as well. So from a statistical standpoint, this is a guy that is very productive. 69% completion rate, 54 touchdowns, only 8 INTs. So we knew that he had something to him. But for him to be in this environment around guys like Air Noland, Jadyn Davis that we talked about earlier, and for him to compete the way that he did, I mean, he's mobile. He had the gamer tag coming into the event. But this is where you make your money, the Elite 11 regionals. This is a guy physically, I think he's got a lot more to develop than we thought coming into it. Andrew and I certainly talked about that today. So if you're Brent Key, Georgia Tech, these are the wins that you have to get in your own backyard. And this looks like they found something there in Aaron Philo.
2 months ago, I had someone ask me about quarterbacks I liked that weren't on the radar. I said Aaron Philo in Georgia, and then this next kid, Judd Anderson. Aaron Philo now committed to Georgia Tech. Judd Anderson committed to Miami. He's got a big frame, Cooper, but he's not necessarily consistent. I think you liked some of the things he did there in Atlanta on Saturday. This is a guy that played in a wing T offense earlier on. Now he's in a spread system. So what did you think of Judd Anderson?
Yeah, you have to take in the whole picture of Judd Anderson before you kind of put him in a box a little bit. And Andrew, you talked about this. You love the basketball context when it comes to the NFL draft. And Judd Anderson, as a sophomore, was a double-double guy for Jones County and his high school team. Now, on the football field, 15 touchdowns, 13 INTs, 54% completion rate. He was a mixed bag, but you turn on the tape and you really like the flashes. 6'6", 210 pounds. He looks to be all of that. And he threw the deep ball really, really well. I think that's a natural part of his game. He plays with really good touch as well. I think it's going to be the consistency of the foot mechanics. And outside of that, he's just going to have to develop as a passer and get more reps. You mentioned him playing in a wing T offense. I think as a senior, this is a big opportunity for him to showcase what he can be. Now, if you're a Miami fan, this is where it gets pretty interesting. You took Emory Williams, who you and I liked, Andrew, last year, but he is more of a developmental passer as well. Now you do that again in consecutive years with Judd Anderson. So Miami there in their quarterback room, just something to keep an eye on.
All right. Vanderbilt, well represented at the regional with a pair of commitments. You got Jeremy St-Hilaire and Whit Muschamp, both participating. Maybe an early glimpse at a potential future Commodore battle here in Nashville, where we record this show. So how do they compare to one another?
Well, you got the high ceiling versus the high floor, right? That's what you got in Jeremy St-Hilaire by way of Canada, a guy who's 6'3" plus, over 200 pounds, moves really well. You turn on the tape is really fun. I thought he struggled in Atlanta over the weekend, but that's really not that much of a surprise. I love the raw developmental upside that Vanderbilt is taking in Jeremy St-Hilaire. Like I said, is a guy really entertaining on tape. I think he can do some things. And if you're Vandy, these are the type of guys that you got to win on that could make a difference in your program. So I also think Whit Muschamp as well, a really high floor player, the coach's son, right? The son of Will Muschamp. And you turn on the tape and you see it. I mean, this is a guy from an intuition standpoint. I talked about all those things and the characteristics of the quarterback position that you look for. That's Whit Muschamp. And when you see him in person, you might think, hey, there's not a lot to him. But in terms of on the field, I mean, his team went 11-2 last year, and they never scored less than 31 points. So he's got a little more to him than people give him credit for. But I like the combination, very complementary skill sets for Vandy there.
I thought you were going to call him Baby Muschamp. You trademarked that name on the podcast at one point. Coop, we have to ask you about Dylan Raiola, right? We got you on the show. Last time Georgia got a 5-star quarterback on the West Coast, it was Jacob Eason, right, who ended up at Washington. I think you're a little familiar. We see the nameplate behind you. Can you just compare Raiola to Jacob Eason for us? You know, are they similar? Are they not similar? Anything in common?
Two very different players. You know, Jacob Eason was a 5-star quarterback out of the state of Washington, 6'5", 210 pounds. I mean, if you could draw up a prototypical NFL quarterback, it'd be Jacob Eason. And the allure of Jacob Eason was the arm talent, but really the arm strength in a guy that was made to play in a pro system play action offense. Now, he went to Georgia, and Jake Fromm was the guy who ended up beating him out. And the reason I bring that up, not from a play style standpoint, but Dylan Raiola is one of the most talented quarterbacks that I think we've seen in the last couple years. But listen, he's going to a place that embraces competition, especially at the quarterback position. And Jacob Eason is a really good story here, right? Because it was Jacob Fromm in a 2-quarterback class that was the one that ended up beating out Jacob Eason, and then 5-star Justin Fields. And then you got Stetson Bennett, who went in the 4th round, who used to be a walk-on. He beats out JT Daniels. So we've seen our fair share of 5-star quarterbacks in Athens. Listen, if you're Dylan Raiola, you better bring your hard hat, right? Because this is going to be a place that Kirby Smart, he doesn't care where you're ranked. At the end of the day, he wants to win national championships. So if it's little old Stetson Bennett or Jake Fromm that can deliver that, that's who he's going to go with. So listen, I love Dylan Raiola. I love the talent. I love what he brings to the table. But at the end of the day, he's going to one of the most competitive environments in the country. You guys talked about Ryan Puglisi earlier. Remember that name. It's not going to be easy for either one of those guys.
I love it. I'm fired up. I hope Dylan Raiola is watching. He better know what he's getting himself into. Coop, thank you so much.
Thank you.
A quick reminder to go ahead and hit that like button if you have not already. We are so close to 100. Would love to hit that triple digits by the end of the show. It's very easy. Just looks like a thumbs up. Speaking of thumbs up, this podcast, make sure you're listening to the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast with Coop and Andrew. New episodes drop every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts.